Good morning. I'm trying to get it to focus on me this morning. That's not working. I put my little post-it note up to remember to hit the focus button, so I talk with my hands and sometimes the picture goes nuts. So I'm going to try to sit back and good morning, Jamie, Shelly, Jen, get on in here. We got some important stuff to talk about today. Important stuff. When we get about 200 people in here, we will start it off. But y'all been buying the dish towels like crazy because they're on sale. And the multi-wand is on sale. They're both half price, so get those things coming. We still got some good prices on our carpet sweeper, and it's for carpets. It's not for floors. It's for carpets. That is $21.95. Hey, Jen. Upstate South Carolina, Carrie. I looked away for a minute, so I missed a bunch of people. So, folks, get on in here. So, here's what's going on. If you're watching the news, everybody is celebrating that our president caved. Well, all I know is the game is not over yet. And I want to talk about being prepared. Because we have, with the federal government being shut down for 35 days, whatever it was, people were hurting. And I want to help you be ready. Not so much for a government shutdown, but maybe a layoff or a bad weather, a sickness in your family where your husband or your wife can't work and so your income's cut in half. I want to help you be prepared. Because there's nothing worse for a mom or a dad to not know how you're going to feed your family. There's nothing worse. And I was blessed, and I don't know how I found these books, but when I was a young mom in the late 70s, early 80s, I found 3 books. And now understand, this is weird. This is really weird. I'm not Mormon. I was raised by country people, my grandmother, my grandfather, all of my grandmother's brothers and sisters, my great-grandmother. They all prepared for winter. It's like the ants, preparing, putting back and storing and doing everything. They slaughtered a calf. They raised hogs. They raised a garden, and my grandmother worked a 40-hour-a-week job at a sewing factory. And on the weekends, when we would go stay with her, I would help her. I would help her work in the garden and break beans and peas and put vegetables up and peel apples to dry, put up corn, she was always doing something. She was always doing something because she wanted to be able to feed her family and her extended family, which amounted to 4 granddaughters. So how I got these books, I have no clue. No clue. None at all. But the author her name was Beverly Nye. Beverly Nye. And the books were printed in the early 80s. And they were about homemaking and rainbows and sunshine. How I found them, I don't know. But the Mormons have an unwritten rule in their religion, or maybe it's just the same unwritten rule that my grandparents had, was you got to be prepared for the rainy day. You got to be prepared for when, as Granny had to go through many times, strikes in her union that she was in. You got to be prepared for that time when you're not going to have the money coming in, but you still got mouths to feed. And so as I'm watching this past month, people in great need, number one, of diapers, food, going to food banks, getting free meals. So it was what I want to instill in you is we still have the ability to keep from having to be desperate. Desperate people do desperate things. And I think that may be why the Mormons push this philosophy of having a 2-year food supply. Because you can pretty much weather any storm with a 2-year food supply. And how to be able to still feed your family and not stress out. And I learned this by watching my grandmother. I learned this by reading these books, and we always had a big garden. When Justin was little, he would get out there with his truck and tractors, and he would plow around things. He would dig ditches to irrigate the garden, and he and his granddaddy had the best time growing this garden. And I would put up hundreds of quarts of tomato juice and canned tomatoes, and I would put up hundreds of quarts of green beans. So that was one of our favorite vegetables. I would can green beans. I would put up black-eyed peas, which is still one of my favorite vegetables. Purple hull peas is really what it was. Your fingers would be purple from shelling them. But I would put up a couple of 100 pints of those. And so you see, being prepared for the problems that come your way helps you to stay calm. Helps you to be ready for any storm that comes. Now, we, as a family, me and Robert, we have food in our freezer, and my grandmother put a lot of things up in her freezer. But in the early 1900s, you didn't have freezers like we have today. And some great some great books for learning how to put things up, like the mountain people here in Western North Carolina did, are the Foxfire books. And they tell you how to slaughter hogs and make lard and you name it, how to make something britches. But anyway, it's dried green beans on a string. And all of this stuff, they're the old ways, but they're still wonderful ways to save things. Now, back in 1999, when Fly Lady first started, I had spent that year getting ready for Y2K because there were people out there saying that when we get to the new century, 2000, that the computers aren't going to work. Well, I believed them, but guess what? It didn't hurt to believe them because I got prepared. I put dried beans up. I bought 5-pound bags of beans and rice and pasta and noodles, and I put enough food back that we could go for a year. Now I've had to use up that food, and it's just I was ready for any emergency. I was ready for any emergency. Now, these books that I read from Beverly Nye, she talked about how to rotate your foods in and out. Leather britches, that's it. How to creative ways to store things in your home. You can use sweater organizers and slide things under the bed for canned goods, and seal things up in metal lard cans to keep critters from getting into it. There's lots of ways to be prepared. Now, I've also seen this 2-year food supply actually hurt people because they got invaded by mice, and the only place the mice couldn't get to was the middle of their dining room table. So they had to put all their food stores up on the dining room table because the field next door to them got in the summertime got plowed and cut down, to build houses, and all the mice came into her house. And it was a horrible thing. And I had to really talk her down. She was just so depressed from all these mice and trying to save her food, and it became a burden at that point. Somebody says having emergency money fund. I remember when I was keeping house, let me find my hanky. I was told early on when we built a house, we borrowed $21,000 to build a house, and the man who lent us the money was with the Farmers Home Administration, and he told me a little secret. And he said, stay a month ahead on your house payment. Get a month ahead. And I'll never forget, my house payment was $153. And I got ahead. And $153, I only made like $105 a week, but I got ahead on that house payment. And that meant that all the monies that I put toward the payment, staying a month ahead, it all kind of went toward principal, and you were able to pay your house out with less interest going toward the loan. So I stayed a month ahead, which meant that gave me a grace period if there was a problem, if I got sick, if Eddie got sick, whatever. We had a little grace period there. I didn't have a great job, but it was a job, and I could use the money that I made to buy groceries, and I had the ability to not be stressed out if we had a problem, if we had any kind of problem. And another thing, when Justin was little, there was only one person working for the first 4 years of his life, and we had to make do. And I was blessed that Justin was allergic to disposable diapers. So didn't have to buy diapers. We had real diapers that had to be washed. Yep, you washed diapers. And rubber breeches to go on the diapers so that little accidents didn't happen all over the house. But we had real diapers, which kept me, if there was an emergency, all I had to do was wash the diapers. So you see, being prepared and having a backup plan is really all about keeping you from being desperate. It's all about you being calm in a storm. It's all about you knowing how you're going to feed your family. And having a 6-month supply of food or a year's supply of food or even a week's supply of food is going to keep you calm. And having money set aside for emergencies. What's the worst thing that can happen in your home? Your heating unit go out? That's probably about, getting it repaired would probably be, $500 to $1,000 if it was something bad wrong with it. Being able to have a backup on a car payment, that could get you through another month. So kind of figure out what your bills are each month and try to put that much aside to give you a grace period of a month. Knowing what you've got to spend on food. If you don't have a resource of having some backup food in your home, then knowing what you got to spend. But what if all the stores are closed and it's you got in a blizzard and you can't get to the store? So having food in your house is a great way. And maybe you're a single mom like we're seeing right now and you have nothing extra for anything. Well, you can buy an extra bag of rice at the grocery store. You can buy a bag of rice each week. You can buy a bag of dried beans each week. And that's not a whole lot to spend, but it would give you some sort of backup. I just want you not to be desperate. And we've seen the news reports of people being in, people who live paycheck to paycheck. Well, if you'll start planning your menus, you can save a lot of money. And I know you don't believe it, but actually planning menus. So earlier this week, I cooked a roast in the oven for 500 degrees. I preheated the oven for 500 degrees, put this roast, and I'd seasoned it up really well, and put it in the oven at 500 degrees. Don't get scared of it. The roast was 3 pounds and 8 ounces. It was a rump roast. And I cooked it for 5 minutes times 3.08 ounces. Cooked it for 16 minutes. And then I turned the oven off. I didn't say there was anything wrong with going to a food bank. I didn't say that. So don't put words in my mouth. Don't put words in my mouth. What I'm saying is we're less stressed when we have our own personal supply of food in our homes. Because what if you can't get out and go to the food bank? What if it's a storm and there's a run on the grocery stores and there's no food in the grocery stores and the trucks can't get in? What I'm saying is being prepared keeps us from being stressed. And it's all about you. It's keeping you calm. Keeping you calm. That's all it is. It's not about taking charity. It's none of that. It's all about you staying calm. Now, learning how to rotate your food in and out is a great way. That's a great tool. First in, whatever came in first. You may have to label cans with dates if you can't see them, but labeling cans and bags of stuff will help you to know when you've got to use it. So being prepared is all about keeping you calm. Having backup diapers, having backup medication in your home. I get a 6-month supply of my medication. I'm good. So folks, take a few minutes each week to think about, are you prepared for an emergency? Whether it's a shutdown, like the poor people in Michigan, that they're going to be, plants are going to be closing because they're not going to make a sedan anymore. Folks have to be prepared for these things to happen. So you stay calm. I live up a mountain. When it snows, I can't get down the mountain. Yesterday, my power went out. I have to have the ability to cook. If I got sidetracked, y'all. I was telling you about my roast. Well, the roast made a good dinner, and I've had lunch off of it for 2 days. I sliced it real thin, and I had some roast beef. And it's really good roast beef. And I didn't really have to cook anything. I had this leftovers. I'm using the leftovers. And I can also make fajitas with it and stir fry it in a skillet with some onions and peppers. Wow. So, planning your menus, executing that plan is going to save you more money each week. It's really going to be amazing how much money you can save. And try eating the food that's in your freezer. Let's, get the old stuff out and eat it instead of throwing it away because it got freezer burned. So please utilize what you've got. Start putting things, and my husband hates it when I put meat in the freezer that comes in the packages from the grocery store. He hates that. He will wrap it up in freezer paper. Now this goes back to my grandmother's brother had a slaughterhouse, and everything would get wrapped in this freezer paper, and it was wonderful. It protected stuff. We got the ability to have vacuum sealers now. If you don't have a vacuum sealer, you can take a freezer bag, Ziploc bag, and suck all the moisture air out of it with a straw in a real close area. There's lots of ways to put a vacuum on stuff. But wrapping things in freezer paper and putting the date on it and what it is, labeling everything that goes in your freezer, you are going to love having this stash of food that you can prepare in an emergency. And you never know what that emergency is. An illness in the family, getting laid off, the government shut down, you just name it. Storms, earthquakes, fires, sometimes you have to be evacuated for fires. And your food stores can get burned up in the fires, but you still have that go bag ready to be evacuated. Being prepared is going to keep you calm. And you can start today by the next time you go to the grocery store, get some dried beans. I got videos on how to cook dried beans. It's not hard. And in a pinch, you can eat dried beans. My grandmother had a smokehouse. Yes, she had a smokehouse. I will never forget it. Going in there and smelling this meat smoking, bacon and hams, and it was just amazing, the smell in this smokehouse. they were prepared. They were prepared for a hard winter and maybe not having any work and maybe not having a good crop. They were farmers and they grew tobacco and cattle. So think about it. I love my mason jars. I have a canner. I have a water bath canner. I have a thing to do tomatoes. It's called a Victorious strainer. And you put the tomatoes in, seeds and all, and crank it out, and the juice comes out one end, and all the seeds and things comes out the middle. So, folks, think about being prepared, having stuff set aside so that you could survive 2 months without a paycheck. Because if you don't have a paycheck, you probably don't have gas to go places either. Guess what, Amy? Kids will eat beans. All you got to do is smash them up and make pancakes out of them. You can make like potato pancakes, you can make bean pancakes. It makes applesauce too. And if you don't have eggs, you can use applesauce for different breads and things. Please think about getting prepared, even if it's just putting a few dollars away each week, or a bag of beans, a bag of rice, and that could sustain you for a week if you had to. It could work. Well, y'all, I'm going to get off of here. I got stuff to do, and I know you have things to do. It's called Family Fun Day. Get out there and do something fun. It's cold here, but the sun is shining. Go sit in a sunbeam. I made apple butter in my crock pot this year. Wonderful apple butter in my crock pot. I had a bunch of dried apples that needed to be used. I put them all in the crock pot with some apple juice, and I made the best apple butter you have ever tasted without a recipe. So y'all have a good day. Start thinking about your menu planning to save money, because it will help you. It will help you. I love you all. I will talk to you later.